The morning of June 11th, 2010, began the way most Yosemite mornings do, cold, clear, and impossibly quiet. Mist drifted above the valley floor, catching the first light of the sun as it poured over the eastern rim. Granite walls turned gold, pines shivered in the wind. Somewhere below, the Merced River whispered its endless rhythm through the canyon. In the parking lot near El Capitan Meadow, a silver Honda Accord sat with its trunk open. A young man in his late 20s moved quietly between the car and a small pile of climbing gear spread neatly on the asphalt. Ropes coiled like serpents, cams and nuts gleaming in the sun, a rolled sleeping bag, a battered backpack. His name was Marcus Chen. Marcus was 28, a software engineer from San Francisco. On paper, an ordinary man. Steady job, small apartment in the Sunset District, no drama, no debt, no secrets. But on weekends, he became someone else, a climber. Not a daredevil, not a prodigy, but serious, focused, and disciplined. His friends use a joke that Marcus treated climbing like coding, methodical, calculated, one move at a time. He wasn't the kind of person who sought risk. He sought control. That morning, he was quiet, concentrated. His friend David Chun, no relation, just a co-worker from the same tech firm, watched him check every knot, test every carabiner, adjust every strap twice. David wasn't staying. He was on his way to Tahoe for his own trip, and Marcus had asked for a ride to Yosemite. They arrived just after sunrise. The air smelled of pine and dust. The granite walls of El Capitan glowed in soft orange light. Marcus's plan was simple. Climb the East Buttress route, spend one night on the wall, and hike down the next day. It was an extreme route, 5.10B, tough but within his range. He'd trained for it. He'd studied every topo, memorized every pitch. Before parting, David lifted Marcus's small camera and snapped a picture. Marcus sitting on a boulder, rope coiled beside him, helmet clipped to his harness, those bright orange La Sportiva Mura climbing shoes on his feet, fresh, clean, ready. Behind him, the massive sweep of El Capitan filled the frame. 3,000 feet of vertical granite stretching into the morning haze. Marcus smiled, the kind of half-smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. Then he stood, slung his pack over his shoulder, and started toward the trailhead. It was 8:37 a.m. That would be the last confirmed moment anyone ever saw him alive. By June 14th, Marcus hadn't checked in with anyone. He was supposed to text David by Sunday night. Nothing came. At first, no one worried. Reception in Yosemite was spotty, and climbers often ran late. But by Tuesday, the unease set in. David called the park office. Rangers checked the parking lot. The Honda Accord was still there, locked. Inside were Marcus's wallet, his phone, and a small cooler half filled with melted ice. No climbing permit. No campsite registration. It was as if he had arrived, stepped out of the car, and vanished. That afternoon, Yosemite Search and Rescue, YOSAR, launched a response. Coordinator Linda Takahashi led the team. They began with the obvious, glassing the East Buttress route through high-powered scopes, scanning every ledge, every shadow. No sign of Marcus. No rope hanging, no bivvy setup, no movement. 2 ground teams were dispatched. One to check the approach trail to the base of El Cap, another to climb the lower pitches. By evening, the sun dipped behind Cathedral Rocks, turning the whole valley to shadow. The searchers returned empty-handed. Nothing. The next morning, helicopters lifted off from a valley floor. The sound echoed between the cliffs as they flew grid patterns across El Capitan and the surrounding formations, cathedral spires, ribbon falls, the meadow below. Thermal imaging revealed nothing but cold stone and scattered heat signatures from other climbers. By the third day, the operation expanded. More than 30 people scoured every trail, drainage, and approach within 2 miles. Marcus's photo, smiling, orange shoes bright, was taped to ranger stations and visitor boards. They interviewed everyone who'd been climbing that weekend. 2 witnesses recalled seeing an Asian man with a red helmet near El Cap Meadow that morning, around 9 a.m., but couldn't confirm it was Marcus. No one saw him on the wall. No one saw him start climb. No gear caches. No dropped equipment. Just absence. Marcus's family arrived from the Bay Area 2 days later. His parents and his younger sister Angela, a nurse who took leave from her job to coordinate the search. His parents, immigrants from Taiwan, were stunned. They didn't understand how a man could disappear in a place surrounded by tourists, rangers, and cameras. Angela tried to stay calm, talking to every ranger, every volunteer. Flyers went up in climbing gyms across Northern California. The online climbing community rallied. Posts on Mountain Project, Super Topo, and Facebook flooded with Marcus's photo and the words, "Last seen June 11th near El Capitan." For a week, Yosemite buzzed with the search. And then it didn't. When days turned into weeks, the rhythm slowed. Helicopters stopped flying. Volunteers went home. The official status shifted from active search to recovery effort. Still, there was nothing to recover. Marcus Chen became another name on Yosemite's long, quiet list of the missing. There are more than 100 of them. Hikers, climbers, photographers, people who walked into the wilderness and never came out. Yosemite doesn't advertise those names. It doesn't have to. The park remembers them in its silence. Angela refused to let the case die. She kept the Facebook page active, posting updates every June. "We're still looking. Please share." The comments grew fewer each year. By 2015, her parents sold their restaurant and retired. They held a memorial service 2 years after Marcus disappeared. There was no body, just a photo on a small easel and a pair of candles burning beside it. Angela spoke through tears. She said Marcus was cautious, careful, someone who always came home. And she didn't understand how he hadn't this time. Over the next decade, the story faded, except in Yosemite. Among climbers, Marcus became a quiet, cautionary tale. Someone would mention his name when planning a solo attempt, or when clouds rolled in before a climb. "Remember Marcus Chen?" They'd say. It meant, don't push your luck. But in August of 2023, 13 years after he vanished, Marcus's name would return, not as a memory, but as a mystery reborn. And it started with a pair of shoes. In the days after Marcus disappeared, Yosemite Valley became a strange blend of movement and stillness. Helicopters beat the air above the granite cliffs, their sound bouncing between El Capitan and cathedral spires like rolling thunder. On the ground, lines of volunteers spread out to the pine forests, sweeping the underbrush with walking poles, calling Marcus's name into the wind. The park was alive with searchers. And yet, it felt hollow, as if the valley itself was holding its breath. Search and rescue coordinator Linda Takahashi kept the operation tight. She'd worked dozens of cases before, lost hikers, climbers stranded on ledges, tourists who wandered off trails. But this one felt different. There were no leads, no sightings, not even a direction. It was like chasing a ghost. By the 4th day, rangers began checking drainages and ravines below El Capitan. They scanned for color, a bright jacket, a rope, anything unnatural. Nothing stood out. The walls of Yosemite are gray and gold, and they swallow detail easily. A man could disappear in plain sight here, and the stone wouldn't say a word. They used scent dogs. They used infrared cameras. The results were always the same. Nothing. That week, the national media caught the story. Experienced San Francisco climber missing in Yosemite. It was a brief headline, the kind that appears once, then vanishes into the next day's news cycle. Angela read every word. She drove from ranger station to ranger station, helping pin flyers to bulletin boards. Her brother's face was everywhere now. Square glasses, calm smile, the bright orange shoes. But Yosemite in June is vast and crowded. Thousands of visitors come and go each day, hundreds of climbers scattered across the valley walls. For every person who saw something, 10 more saw nothing. And what little information they did have contradicted itself. Some thought Marcus had started late in the morning. Others said they saw him earlier, walking toward the base with a small day pack instead of his haul bag. A few climbers swore they spotted someone resembling him near the trail to Mirror Lake, miles away from El Capitan. None of it made sense. Takahashi's log entry for June 17th reads simply, no verified sightings, no gear, no scent. Search continues along East Buttress and upper drainage. Probable fatality if not located within 48 hours. When a search enters its second week, the rhythm changes. The rush of hope gives way to procedure. Crews get smaller. Flights get fewer. The tone in the command tent shifts from urgent to resigned. No one says out loud, but everyone knows the math. After 7 days in Yosemite summer heat, the odds of survival plummet. Angela stayed. Every morning, she stood in the meadow below El Capitan, looking up at the massive face of granite where her brother was supposed to be. Sometimes she thought she saw a movement, a flash of color, a glint of metal, but it was always just light shifting on rock. She began talking to climbers who passed through. Many of them knew Marcus, at least by name. They remembered his caution, his calmness. One called him the most prepared person on the wall. That made everything worse, because if he could vanish, anyone could. After 10 days, the official search scaled back. The radio chatter grew thin. The volunteers packed up. The park posted an update online. Search for missing climber Marcus Chen has been suspended pending new information. Angela didn't accept it. She contacted private search companies, the kind that specialize in wilderness recoveries. One group agreed to help at a reduced cost. They brought drones, thermal gear, and experienced trackers. For a while, it felt like progress. They re-examined satellite images, looking for anything: a rope line, a shadow, a tent. Nothing. They combed the forest floor beneath the east face of El Capitan, searching in grid patterns. They found bits of old webbing, candy wrappers, and scraps from other climbers, but nothing that belonged to Marcus. One of the searchers, a veteran of mountain rescues in Alaska, said quietly on the radio, "It's like he never started to climb." That thought stuck with everyone. In July, after nearly a month of searching, Angela stood on the bridge over Merced River, staring up at the cliffs. The water below glittered like broken glass. She remembered how Marcus used to talk about the mountains, how they made him feel small, how the silence of granite walls felt like being inside time itself. Now she wondered if time had swallowed him completely. That same week, the family's funds ran out. The private team left. The official case file was moved to a shelf inside Yosemite's law enforcement office, labeled missing, presumed deceased. And just like that, Marcus Chen became a statistic. For the next few years, the valley moved on. Seasons shifted. Snow fell, melted, and fell again. The cliffs echoed with new voices, new climbers. But among the rangers, the name stayed. Every few months, someone would mention it, a kind of superstition. When storms rolled in too quickly, when someone pushed beyond their limits, someone would always mutter, "Remember Marcus Chen." It became a quiet warning, passed around like folklore. His orange shoes turned into a symbol of caution, of control, of how even the careful ones could disappear. Angela tried to rebuild her life. She returned to nursing, moved north to Oregon, married, had a child. But she never stopped checking her brother's Facebook page. Every June, she'd post an update, a photo, a few words. 13 years today, still no answers. Most years, the post got a handful of likes, a few sympathetic comments from strangers. But she didn't do it for them. She did it because she couldn't stop. And then came August 2023. The park was busy that summer. The trails crowded, the heat relentless. On the morning of August 15th, 3 climbers, Jesse Kowalski, Maria Fernandez, and David Tran, began their ascent of Half Dome via the cable route. It was a perfect day. Clear sky, low wind, visibility for miles. By early afternoon, they reached the summit, a broad plateau of smooth granite, surrounded by the kind of silence that only exists above 8,000 feet. They sat, ate energy bars, took photos, and then Jesse noticed something near the highest rock outcrop. 2 small shapes, half buried in dust. At first, he thought they were trash, maybe old sneakers left behind by hikers. But when he walked closer, he stopped. They were climbing shoes. La Sportiva Mura, orange, size 9. They'd been there for a long time, years maybe. The rubber was cracked. The color faded almost pink from sun exposure. But they hadn't been tossed aside. They'd been placed carefully, deliberately, side by side, toes pointing toward the valley below. Inside the left shoe, Jesse saw something glint. A small Ziploc bag. Inside the bag, a folded piece of paper, yellowed and thin. In neat block letters, written in blue ink. Marcus Chen, June 12, 2010. Below that, a line of coordinates. Jesse stared at it, trying to remember why the name sounded familiar. Maria took a photo. David suggested they take the shoes with them. Probably a memorial, he said. So they did. 5 hours later, dusty and exhausted, the trio reached the valley floor and walked into Yosemite Visitor Center. They handed the shoes to Ranger Thomas Brennan, who listened silently, then called someone on his radio. Within 20 minutes, Linda Takahashi, the same coordinator who had led the original search 13 years earlier, arrived. When she saw the shoes, her face changed. The brand, the model, the size, it all matched the original report from 2010. Takahashi didn't say much. She bagged the shoes as evidence, sealed the note separately, and thanked the 3 hikers. Then she stepped into her office, closed the door, and called Angela Chun. Angela was at home in Portland when her phone rang. It was 9:34 p.m. At first, she didn't recognize the number. When she answered, she heard a calm voice say, "Angela, this is Ranger Takahashi from Yosemite. I need to speak with you about something we found today." Angela froze. For a moment, her mind refused to process it. 13 years of silence, broken by a single sentence. Takahashi explained what they'd found, where they'd found it, and what it might mean. Angela listened, tears rolling down her face. She asked the first thing that came to mind. Does this mean he was on Half Dome? Takahashi hesitated. We don't know yet, but we're going to find out. That night, Angela couldn't sleep. She opened her brother's old Facebook page and stared at his photo, the same one from El Capitan Meadow. The orange shoes glowed faintly in the image, catching the morning sun. Now, after all these years, they come back to her, but without answers. The next morning, Yosemite's investigation unit reopened the Marcus Chen case file. The folder was thick, maps, photos, printed witness statements, all dated from 2010. 13 years of dust brushed away with a single discovery. Ranger Linda Takahashi studied the photo of the shoes that the hikers had taken. Even through the grainy screen of Jesse's phone, she recognized them instantly. The La Sportiva Mura model, orange synthetic upper, black rubber rand. Marcus's gear list, provided by his family back then, included those exact shoes, size 9. But the discovery raised more questions than it answered. Half Dome was 4 miles from El Capitan, across deep forest river, and terrain nearly impossible to traverse without descending the entire valley. Marcus hadn't applied for a Half Dome permit in 2010, nor did his skill level suggest he'd attempt one of its technical routes. So how did his shoes end up on the summit? And why now? 13 years later, Takahashi sent the shoes and the note to the park's small forensics lab. The results confirmed what she already suspected. The shoes were at least a decade old, consistent with exposure to the elements, sun bleaching, water damage, oxidation on the metal eyelets. No DNA could be recovered. Whatever biological material had once existed was long gone. But the handwriting on the note, that was something else. It matched samples from Marcus's apartment lease, found in the original file. Same neat block lettering. Same way he wrote his M. It was real. The note was his. The GPS coordinates on the paper pointed to a spot on the east face of Mount Watkins, about 2,000 feet above the valley floor. A steep, remote area known mostly to advanced climbers. Far from trails, far from where anyone would expect a lost man to go. Takahashi assembled a 4-person search and rescue recon team. They left the valley at dawn on September 5th, 2023, hiking through thick forests, crossing creeks, and bushwhacking toward the base of the mountain. By late afternoon, they reached the wall, a towering expanse of pale granite, streaked with water lines and lichen. The air was dry, silent except for the wind. They set up camp at the base and started climbing the next morning. By noon, they reached the elevation indicated by the coordinates. And there, on a broad ledge about 40 feet wide, they found it. A small alcove, half sheltered by overhang, surrounded by broken granite and moss. Inside, a torn blue tarp, shredded by time, pinned under rocks. A few feet away, an empty metal water bottle, half buried in dust, scattered around. Faded pieces of webbing, a broken carabiner, the rusted remains of a camp stove canister, and several freeze-dried food packets with expiration dates of 2010. But it was what they found wrapped in plastic that made everyone stop. A small black moleskine notebook. The first page read, in careful handwriting, Marcus Chen, June 12, 2010. The Rangers carefully peeled open the pages. Despite moisture and years of decay, most of it was legible. There were 16 days of entries. The first few seemed almost ordinary. June 12th, arrived valley early. Felt wrong about El Cap. Instinct said don't climb today. Saw something on approach. Changed my plan. Going to check another spot. June 13th, reached the ledge. Harder than I thought. Enough food for a week, maybe 10 days of careful. The spot is here. I can see it from the ledge. Exactly where I thought it would be. Go to wait and watch. Then, the tone shifted. June 16th, nothing for 2 nights. Thought I imagined it. Maybe I'm wrong. June 18th, saw it again last night. Same pattern. Around 2 a.m. lights moving through the trees below. But there's no trail there. No road. No reason for anyone to be there at night. I think I know what it is now. June 19th, found the access point this morning. Hidden well. You wouldn't see it unless you knew. I was right. Go to document everything. If I don't make it back, someone needs to know. After that, the writing became shaky, erratic. Words slanted, lines uneven. Some pages were smeared with water stains or dirt. June 20th, too far to go. Back now. June 23rd, water almost gone. June 26th, wrong choice. June 28th, sorry Angela. And then, nothing. When Takahashi read the entries aloud that evening, no one spoke for a long time. They all felt the same unease, the kind that comes when a mystery deepens instead of resolves. Marcus had survived at least 16 days after he vanished. He climbed to a remote ledge on Mount Watkins, a feat that required skill and purpose. He wasn't lost. He was looking for something. But what? The team photographed every inch of the site. They collected everything. The tarp, the webbing, the food packets, the notebook, and packed them into evidence bags. Then, before descending, one of the rangers scanned the cliff face below the ledge with binoculars. There was nothing obvious. No remains, no clothing, no gear, just endless gray rock dropping into forest. They radioed down. No further sign. Beginning descent. The next week, a ground search was launched in the forest below Mount Watkins. 15 SAR members and 20 volunteers combed the drainage area for 3 days. They found nothing, not even a scrap of fabric. When word of the discovery reached Angela, she flew to California immediately. Takahashi met her at the ranger office, where the evidence was laid out on a table. The shoes, the note, the notebook, the photos. Angela stared at the handwriting, tracing the letters of her brother's name with her finger. It was his. She knew instantly. Takahashi explained what they'd found, carefully, fact by fact. The entry suggested Marcus had been alive for at least 2 weeks after June 12th, maybe longer. He'd seen lights, unexplained movement in the forest at night, and had gone to investigate. Whatever he found, it was never recorded. Angela listened silently, tears falling without sound. Then she asked, "You think he found something, don't you?" Takahashi hesitated. I think he believed he did. The following month, a forensic document examiner confirmed the notebook's authenticity. The handwriting matched Marcus's exactly. The ink was degraded but chemically consistent with pens from that time period. There was no sign of tampering. No evidence the notebook had been planted later. That, however, only deepened the mystery, because the coordinates on the note found in the half-dome shoes were not exactly the same as the ledge where the journal was discovered. They pointed to a spot 100 yards east, slightly lower on the face, another ledge system, smaller, partially hidden by an overhang. Why leave coordinates to somewhere else? And even stranger, the shoes on Half Dome hadn't been there at the start of the 2023 season. Rangers inspect the summit every July before opening the cables for hikers. Nothing unusual had been reported, meaning those shoes had been placed within the past 6 weeks. Someone or something had carried Marcus Chen's shoes to the summit of Half Dome in 2023, 13 years after he disappeared. Late that year, in December, a climbing ranger volunteered to revisit Mount Watkins. He wanted to check the precise coordinate from a note, the one east of the original ledge. He went alone. He started early, reaching the site by afternoon. The air was thin, the wind biting. The ledge at the coordinates was small, maybe 10 feet across, sloping slightly outward. Nothing there. No gear, no rope, no human trace. But just as he turned to rappel down, something caught his eye. On the granite wall, faintly etched beneath a layer of lichen, were letters. He brushed the stone gently. Beneath the moss, a carving emerged, crude but deliberate. MC June 19, 10. Marcus Chen. June 19, 2010. The same date he'd written in his journal. The day he said he'd found the access point. When Takahashi received the report, she felt a chill she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't fear exactly, more like the uneasy realization that Marcus's last known act had been to leave a mark, a message, in the stone itself. After that, he had disappeared completely. She looked again at the notebook, the lines where he'd written, "If I don't make it back, someone needs to know." And she thought, someone needs to know what? But Yosemite has always kept its secrets. January in Yosemite is quiet. The tourists are gone. The trails are buried under snow. At dawn, the granite walls glow pale blue, and the air feels like glass, thin, brittle, unforgiving. That was when Linda Takahashi authorized one final search for Marcus Chen. Not a symbolic gesture. A real operation, methodical, planned, and exhaustive. She called it closure. Though no one really believed closure was possible here. On January 8th, 2024, 25 people assembled in the cold. Rangers, volunteers, climbing experts, 2 forensic specialists, and a pair of dogs trained to detect human remains even under snow. Their mission? To comb every drainage, every ledge, every possible descent route between Mount Watkins and the valley floor, a 2-mile radius around the coordinates from the note. They worked in teams. Drones buzzed above the cliffs. Ground-penetrating radar scanned beneath layers of debris. From above, Yosemite looked calm. Silent ridges, frozen waterfalls, pine trees dusted with frost. But for the people below, it was a labyrinth of ice and stone. The search lasted 5 days. 5 days of climbing, rappelling, scanning, digging. And when it was over, the result was the same as it had been 13 years earlier. Nothing. No bones. No clothing. No rope. No trace. That night, back in the ranger station, Takahashi sat at her desk surrounded by evidence bags. The orange shoes. The notebook. The photos of the carved initials. The journal had been analyzed again, this time by a linguistics specialist from UC Davis. He found something strange. According to him, Marcus's writing pattern changed dramatically halfway through the entries. In the first pages, the handwriting was tight and precise, typical of an engineer, logical, structured. But after June 18th, the syntax broke down. The sentences shortened. Some were fragments, written as if under stress or exhaustion. He circled one phrase in particular. "The spot is here, exactly where I thought it would be." And beneath it, faintly visible even through water stains, another line Marcus had started to write and scratched out. "It's not natural." When Takahashi read that, something inside her shifted. Not fear, not superstition. Just a quiet understanding that Marcus had been certain of something. Something he believed was real, even as his body failed him. Maybe it was a trick of light, reflections from headlamps or passing vehicles. Maybe it was hypoxia, dehydration, or exhaustion. Or maybe it was exactly what he thought he saw. Whatever it was, it had led him away from El Capitan, across the valley, up a different mountain. It had kept him there for 16 days. And in the end, It had taken him somewhere no one could follow. In February 2024, Angela Chen returned to Yosemite for the first time in years. The snow was melting, the valley glistening under winter sun. She met Takahashi in person. Two women bound by a story neither of them could escape. In the ranger office, Takahashi laid out the evidence for her one last time. The notebook, the photos, the shoes. Angela touched the cracked leather gently. The once bright orange had faded to coral pink. The rubber split from age. She said softly, "He used to clean these after every climb. He said they were his lucky pair." Takahashi nodded. She explained that the official classification will remain unchanged, missing, presumed deceased. Angela nodded back. She didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue with. That night, she drove out to Tunnel View, the lookout where visitors first see the valley unfold. El Capitan on the left, Half Dome far in the distance, Mount Watkins catching the last light on the right. She stood there until dusk. The cliffs glowed rose gold, then turned gray, then black. For a long time, she didn't move. Then she whispered, "You were watching something, weren't you? You saw it." Her breath hung in the freezing air, then disappeared. Today, the artifact of the Marcus Chen case sits sealed inside a small evidence room in Yosemite's law enforcement office. A clear plastic bag labeled MC 2010, recovered 2023. Inside it, the two shoes, the note, the coordinates, the folded notebook. The carved initials remain etched into granite of Mount Watkins, MC June 1910, weathering slowly under wind and rain. Every few months, a new ranger asks about the case. Takahashi tells him what she always tells everyone. He saw something he couldn't explain. He followed it, and he never came back. For investigators, what remains are fragments, a route that defies logic, a timeline that shouldn't exist, a pair of shoes that reappeared 13 years too late. The theory most believe is simple. Marcus lost his bearings on the approach to El Capitan, wandered toward Mount Watkins, got stranded, and perished from exposure. But that doesn't explain the coordinates. It doesn't explain the note placed on Half Dome. And it certainly doesn't explain the lights he described, moving through the trees where no trail exists. Some rangers think another climber found Marcus's gear years later and decided to leave the shoes on Half Dome as a tribute. Others reject that idea. No one would hike 4 miles of steep granite just to stage something like that. And besides, the note was written in Marcus's own hand. No theory fits completely. And maybe that's the point. Yosemite has always had its ghosts. There are stories whispered among rangers, of voices on the cliffs, of strange lights seen by night crews near Mirror Lake, of figures glimpsed in storm fog that vanished when approached. No one talks about them officially, but everyone's heard something. The valley keeps its secrets. It's easy to imagine Marcus sitting on that ledge in June 2010, wind howling to the pines, the moon lighting the forest below, watching something move that shouldn't have been there. Maybe he thought he was close to understanding it. Maybe he thought he was documenting something important. Maybe he thought he had found the truth. Whatever he saw, it changed him, enough to make him abandon his plan, climb to a different mountain, and carve his name into the rock, a mark to say, "I was here. I found it." And then nothing. Angela keeps her brother's Facebook page active. Every year on June 12th, she posts, "Still looking." Sometimes strangers write to her, hikers, climbers, people who read about the case online. They send photos of Half Dome, of the valley at night, of strange lights caught in long exposure shots. Most are tricks of reflection. Some aren't. Angela replies to each message politely. She doesn't believe in ghosts, she says. But she doesn't disbelieve either. Because every night, when she thinks of her brother, she imagines him still out there, somewhere between the cliffs and the stars, watching, recording, waiting. On clear nights, satellites drift silently above Yosemite. They capture every contour of the valley, every flicker of light. If you look close enough, frame by frame, you'd see the same things Marcus once saw. The shadows of trees, the shimmer of water, the thin silver thread of the Merced River winding through darkness. But sometimes, in the images, there's something else. A faint blur of movement in places where no one should be. A reflection without a source. The analysts who process those images don't notice. The algorithms file them under anomalous reflection, data without meaning. But if Marcus Chen were alive to see them, maybe he'd recognize what he wrote about, the lights that move through the forest where no road exists. At sunrise, the granite turns gold again. Tourists take photos, climbers rack their gear, and the valley wakes as if nothing ever happened. The mountain stands silent, indifferent, eternal. Somewhere out there, the wind moves across a hidden ledge, brushing over the carved letters. MC June 1910. They're fading now, softened by years of sun and rain. But they're still there, proof that for at least a moment, Marcus Chen was real, and that he found something worth following, even into the unknown. Because that's how stories like this end. Not with discovery, not with closure, but with silence, the kind that only mountains can keep.